Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping families love God and use tech. Today, we're asking the questions, should our schools go phone free? This conversation is spurred in a large part by the book, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. This is the book that, if you have not read it, I strongly encourage it. If you want, you can send me a note at nathan@gospeltech.net, and I'll send you some pages to go check out and highlight. I've been giving away tabbed copies of this book because it's just that valuable of a conversation. 3 things I love about this book. First, it's written by a guy named Jonathan Haidt. He's an NYU professor at the Stern School of Business, and he does a great job of research. Second is that he has tons and tons of research in this book of making the manifold or manifest, I guess, research that is present and available to everyone, stuff that I've referenced in my own talks. He does a great job of consolidating it. And then third, he has the ethos to write this book. In writing The Coddling of the American Mind, he brought up, and actually Righteous Minds, he's brought up a lot of the sociological factors that he addresses here. And then this book, he talks not just that tech is bad. He's not a fearmonger. He's not out there to blame anybody. He's saying, here's what we know from a decade of research. The research consistently shows smartphones, for example, are having a specific impact on the classroom. And then he goes to talk about what can we do next? The kids aren't a lost cause, that we haven't lost a generation. As many of even these young people are telling themselves, like, well, I'm just damaged goods because we didn't know. But instead, hey, this is something we didn't see coming, that now we can see it, and that in love, we need to address this. So as loving parents, if we believe that, yes, we should have go phone free in our schools, that there's things we should do. And if we believe firmly, no, we need to not go phone free in our schools, that there are things we should do. So that's today's conversation. And that's why we're having this, is because it's the front of our minds. Schools either started on the East Coast or is about to, depending where you're at. And on the West Coast here, we've got about 3 weeks till that drops. So let's have the conversation. Should we go phone free? We're going to look first at what we mean when we say phones. We're talking about smartphones. When we talk about a smartphone, we are talking about a device that is designed to deliver apps. That is the goal of a smartphone. That's the revenue stream for a smartphone. I just updated my smartphone. I use one. I love it. And I lock that baby down so it's tool tech. I've mentioned this before, but my smartphone doesn't have an app store. My smartphone doesn't have any social media, even though I use it for work. I use it only through my work laptop. And my smartphone is pretty darn dumb. It has Covenant Eyes on the one browser that's available. I just use, what do I use now? I use Safari for my browser. Covenant Eyes is great. It's an accountability piece and it helps me make the good decisions I like to make. And if I ever don't want to, 2 people who care about me will also see it. Love that. So it's a real dumb phone, but it lets me do GPS and it lets me do Audible books and it lets me do the logistics. I don't even have email on that. It's just a communication device that's really fancy, and I get to take pictures and videos of all my favorite peoples and locations, right? Because if you don't have a photo, it didn't happen. But that's my smartphone. I have them. I like them. It's great. But the fact that I upgraded my smartphone didn't make that smartphone company any money, really. Where does their money come in? Well, it comes, certainly hardware's a little bit, but it comes from the subscription monthly, certainly, that I'm now paying a little bit to the phone company for the opportunity to own this multi-$1,000 device. And it comes from app sales. So when Apple sells me a phone, maybe the hardware, but where they're really making their money is they take 1/3 of every microtransaction that's in the App Store, which is why Fortnite no longer is in the App Store. When I go to the Apple App Store, Fortnite's not there. Why? The company said we are bringing in billions of dollars on a free-to-play game every single year, and Apple's charging us 1/3 of that. So if we bring in $5 billion, you want $1.5 billion just for the opportunity to be downloaded from your device? No, thank you. We're going to go Android only. That was a huge lawsuit battle. Apple won. The company said, hey, you provide this platform. There's other places they could go. If they want to be here, they got to pay your fees. And Apple said, we think 1/3 of what you bring in is fair. That's a lot of cash coming in through apps. That means there's every incentive for $1 trillion company to take your time, your focus, and your money, because that's their revenue stream. Which means if you're giving a smartphone to a developing brain, the goal of the company behind that smartphone is distract you because it's worth money. It's why Netflix said their competitor isn't other streaming services. It's sleep. It's why there are microtransactions and things aimed at young brains. And it's why we need some kind of understanding about what these phones are actually doing. Because at the end of the day, these phones are built for distraction, mostly delivering drool tech. Can they be beneficial and provide amazing tool tech? Yeah, that's why I own one. And it takes deliberate action. So what we see when we see the research is that academically, socially, so academically meaning in a learning environment, the impact of a smartphone, does it make your child better or worse at learning? In net view, meaning there are some spots where your kid can learn Duolingo. That's great. Khan Academy. That's amazing. But the smartphone has enough distraction that it actually is a loss when it comes to your child's learning. Your child will do worse than he or she would have done in terms of retention, in terms of test scores, in terms of standardized testing, in terms of focus, in terms of sleep, and in terms of relational well-being with a smartphone than he or she would have done without it. There are absolutely fringe cases for their kids on the LGBTQ plus spectrum where they go, but this is really important for these kids. And that research is there. But like, oh, this group says it's really important for mental well-being. But that group is also showing the lowest mental well-being by a wide margin compared to their peers. What does that tell us? This group is telling us social media is the only way we're surviving, and we're not doing that great. So we're also seeing that social media is one of the main ways that they are being bullied and hunted down and treated poorly. The argument that therefore we need smartphones because it's the way kids connect is countered by the fact that it's also the number one way they're running into harmful content for their mental and social and emotional well-being. I just wanted to put that out there because that's one of the main arguments is, yeah, but what about their ability to connect? It is. It's true. Kids connect. And the things they're connecting to aren't always positive. What we are seeing is the damage of social media on a smartphone is mitigated in large part by healthy, real-world interactions, primarily seen in real-world friendships and real-world athletic engagement. Does that mean that your kid plays a sport, they're going to be better? No. I know a young person who played 3 elite sports. I taught her in my 8th grade language arts class, and she had panic attacks all the time. Not because of her social media, but because she was so burned out from playing 3 elite sports. 3 different select teams in the same seasons that were absolutely destroying her 14-year-old body. So playing a sport is not some kind of panacea that's going to fix everything you ever had a problem with. Plenty of kids play sports, don't know the hope of Christ, and are burning themselves out and questioning their value. What we do know is it's a wonderful way. Playing sports is a wonderful way to gain real-world relationships and experience some real-world responsibility and risk within healthy confines that social media and smartphones don't provide you. So social media is one of the major parts. Gaming is a second part, and streaming is a third. Streaming being you are getting to online content, be that through Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, or just websites in general, YouTube, and you are ingesting that content without any particular motive. It's not, I'm going to do research so I can watch this or write this paper. It's, I'm going to go because I have 15 minutes. So that's what I'm going to do right now. YouTube is a great example of this because they've got over 1 billion monthly users. In fact, they have over 2 billion monthly users. And if they got just 10% of their population to stay 1 minute, they would have enough time for people to watch all 10 seasons of Friends more than 70,000 times. That's if 1 in 10 viewers stayed just 1 minute. And as of 2016, the last time we saw these stats from YouTube, they said that more than 70% of their views came from the suggested bar. So 7 out of 10 people came to figure out how to fix their AC unit and stayed to figure out how that squirrel got through that maze. That's important for us to know when we say, all right, learning environment. Well, what's the point of the learning environment? The point of an educational system, as anyone would tell you, is to raise learners, not to raise buckets that are full of knowledge. We want kids that don't just know the right answer, but they know how to get there. They know how to think. They know how to process. We want to raise informed, critical thinking American citizens. And that's the reason we have a public education system. Tax dollars go in because this is good for the nation. We want to see young people process the hard questions and learn how to have conflict because they're going to vote one day. And we don't just want them to vote on how they feel. We want them to vote on how they feel based on how they think. And they want logic and rhetoric and the ability to critically discern between a good and a bad idea based on information, not just based on who said it loudest or most recently. So, public education, if we're here for the development of young minds and the character of those minds, kids who can understand right and wrong, kids who can discern good and bad, then we want things that help that. And what we have seen in the learning environment is that smartphones are a net loss. We're not talking about one-to-one devices. We're not talking about screens in general. We are saying smartphones, those devices that are designed to take your time and your focus and your money, because that's their revenue stream. They're there to deliver Drool Tech because they make a third of what is sold as a microtransaction. I didn't explain microtransaction. That's any transaction that happens within an app. So this isn't you go on to whatever your investment app is and you move from one account to another account, right? You're at Bank of America and you go from account A to account B. This is you play Fortnite and you buy a new skin, so it changes the way your character looks. Or you play Clash of Clans and you pay money so that you can get more of the thing within the 24 hours because they put a time limit on how much you can do within 24 hours. Or you play Duolingo and you bought the premium version, or you paid extra for crystals so that you can practice more, or whatever it might be. That is an example of a microtransaction. The companies make money off that. That device is now in your pocket. You're in a learning environment. And the research we have shows it hurts your ability to remember, your ability to focus, your ability to relate with one another. It's not a net gain. In an environment where the goal is from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., we are going to learn how to learn. We're going to do what Cal Newport calls deep work. Smartphones are a net loss in that environment. We used to believe, we were optimistic 10 years ago. We're like, this is kind of cool. This is kind of new. I worked in a school district here in Washington State, and we said these devices are going to be the great equalizer because everyone's going to have them. Not every district can afford that fancy tablet situation. Not everyone's got a Chromebook. What we're going to have is every kid is going to have a learning device, and we are going to make teacher-shared common curriculum. And we're going to upload these to shared drives like Google Drives, and teachers are going to get the best of the best. Teacher of the Year is now going to have lesson plans out that every teacher can access. And every student is going to have access to the internet and the ability to get the knowledge that is out there, which is still true. But it turns out the knowledge that's out there isn't all equal. It turns out that when your child has the opportunity to read Jack London's To Build a Fire, a story about our instincts versus our knowledge, an important and probably applicable story for this particular conversation, or tap that button right next to the shared drive and open up Minecraft, that a young 8th grade brain opts for Minecraft. Plenty of learning to happen there. The problem being, it's the kind of learning that consumes all the learning around it. It doesn't inspire more learning, it ingests the learning. And now this is the only learning I want to do, and the rest of that can just go to the birds. What we have found is that smartphones are so powerful, they're so engaging, that instead of inspiring more knowledge and learning, which is what education is meant to do, to show you can learn, to equip you to learn, and then get you to apply that learning to the real world, into the communication and relationships you have, instead it goes, why even bother with anything else? This is so good, just stay here. That's the concern with Drool Tech, is you can be convinced you need something you never wanted, and you can be convinced to give up things you actually need to get to the things you now want, which is the definition of addiction, when you give up things you need to get to what you want. That's what our concern is with smartphones. They're a net loss in the classroom. So at this point, we know that they're a net loss. The question is, should schools go phone free? In this argument, I love this line from Jonathan Haidt. I'm actually going to read you from his book. So we are on page 248. If you got a copy of the book, if you don't, get it. It's worth it. He talks about the Mountain Middle School in Durango, Colorado, went phone-free back in 2012 at the start of the mental health crisis. He's been tracking the mental health crisis in the United States, noting that it is the growth of the mental health crisis directly correlates with the introduction of social media in its newest form, where likes are a thing, where it no longer is about connecting, but instead it's about social belonging and social hierarchy and behavioral training in order to get people to come back more often. We're going to skip down to Voss, Prince Shane Voss, the head of the school. Voss implemented a cell phone ban. For the entire school day, phones had to stay in backpacks, not in pockets or hands. There were clear policies and real consequences if phones were found out of the backpack during school hours. The effects were transformative. And then if I skip to the next page, he says a phone ban, he puts this in quotation marks, limited to class time is nearly useless. This means a phone ban that says, hey, you just can't use it in the 45 minutes you're in this classroom. Lunches, passing period, go nuts, but not in the classroom. He said those are nearly useless. This is why schools should go phone free for the entirety of the school day. And then he goes on to explain what that might look like, that this is, you show up, you put your phone in something, and then you can get it back at the end of the day. The reason he's arguing this on page 248 and 249 is there's 247 pages that set up, we have an issue, that it stems and is exacerbated from use of social media and specifically smartphones in a learning environment, and that in an environment that is dedicated to developing kids of character and intellect, smartphones are a net loss. That we're giving up opportunities we could have had easy gains for, and that it is hurting those kids most who are the most at need of an education to be able to process. The kids that struggle the most with reading, the kids that struggle the most with attendance, the kids that struggle the most with resources are getting smartphones, and they are more likely to experience the worst sides and find the highest levels of isolation and the highest levels of degradation in their academic performance and their relational well-being because of the presence of a smartphone. So should our schools go phone free? Yeah, they should. The question is, what does it look like? How do we get rid of it? In this case, it was backpacks. We're going to put your smartphone in a backpack. This is 2012. You're not going to take it out at all. And if you do, there's real consequences. And in the footnotes at the very end, you can go read what those are. But basically, we're going to take your phone away for the remainder of the day. You can come get it. If it happens twice, your parents can come get it. If it happens 3 times, we're now treating this not like an academic issue. We're not going to grade you down. You don't lose 5% on the class. This is a behavioral issue. You are clearly not in a spot where you're in control of your behavior, and we need to talk about what does it look like for you to get well. It's a great conversation for a school to have to a young person who's showing a sign of a lack of health, who's hurting themselves or others with their behavior, which we know a smartphone can do in the wrong situations. So we need to go phone free. How does a school do this? First of all, they need parental support. Parents, we must tell our schools that we're in support of this, that we care about our kids and that we care about them caring about our kids, that going phone free is something that's a priority for us. It's going to have a cost financially for the school, a cost emotionally for the kids, and a cost behaviorally for the teachers, because we got a bunch of kids that don't know what it's like to be without their phone from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. There's a very real emotional weight that comes with this for young people. And if it comes across if we don't trust you, we don't like you, and we blame you for these mistakes, and so we're taking your phones to teach you a lesson, that will be the wrong message. That's not what we're saying. We are saying we care about you. You have an amazing hope and a future. We believe that education is only going to expand how awesome you are and the incredible things you can do. And we know that device is hurting our opportunity to teach you and to see you grow. If we know it hurts you and or others, we can't let it be here. You've asked for an egg. We gave you a scorpion. That's on us. We're going to lovingly remove this thing from our learning environment. Doesn't mean you can't have it before you show up. Doesn't mean you can't use it when you go away. It means in these hours, when you're under our purview, when it's our job to help you stay safe and sane, we are going to remove smartphones. There's really 4-ish, 5, if you, depending on how you count it. I'm going to read this off a little list that I made. The first thing you can do, and Haidt has a list, but I'm going to read you through a similar-ish list. The first is we can just ask people to play nice. Please keep them in your pockets. We know that actually this is a bad idea. Kids who have smartphones in their pockets, even if they're turned off, have to focus on not thinking about their phone. It's a bad decision. It does not help kids. When we're talking in a phone-free environment, it's a bad decision. So if our goal is help kids learn and learn how to learn, have that idea of deep work, the ability to focus over extended periods of time, what we can't have them do is constantly battling the desire to check their phone. That is a difficult thing for even a developed brain that has a prefrontal cortex that can inhibit behavior. It's what its job is. Kids don't have that. It doesn't actually finish till you're 25, but you have a better chance with young adults. And a young person at 14, 15, they are not able to have that battle. The phone will win. And even if it doesn't win by them picking it up, it wins by taking operating speed. So if they, let's just say, I'm going to make up a number. Let's say they have 100% of their bandwidth. 10% is now buffering, saying, don't think about your phone, don't think about your phone. And there's been tests done that's shown what we call brain drain, that the presence of the phone actually makes their test scores and their information recall worse just because it's in front of them or on their person or even in their backpack turned off. That brings us to our second. The second is you can say, they can't be on your person. It needs to be in your backpack. We can't see it throughout the school day, but you can keep it on you. That's okay. You're going to run into issues with this because, as they found out at this school, kids are going to take it out. And now the school has extra behavioral conversations that need to happen. It can work. This is better than letting the kids have it on them and just saying, don't let me see it, because you're just asking kids to cheat. It's better than saying you can use it in the hallways or at the lunchroom. What you would say in the second version is you can keep it on your person. We get it. You need it for sports. You need it for transportation. You need it for home communication. It makes your parents feel better that you've got it on you. Keep it in your backpack. Don't let us see it. Are kids going to sneak it? Yes. If they get caught seeing it, I had an admin at a school I was just talking with who said this is the driving on the highway analogy, where this is the speed limit. If you speed, you might get caught. Not 100% of the time, but speeding has calculated risks with it. You could do that in this scenario as well. You can say, you know what? It's absolutely an option that you could go and use your phone. But if we see it, we're removing it. Not because we're scared, not because we're running a police state, not because we feel a need to control you, but because we know this thing is not helpful. And we're putting up loving boundaries to buffer from the bad things that happen. I talk to school after school after school and ask how many of the behavioral issues you have to address, from bullying to fights to drama to self-harm to any of that, stems from the use of social media, or the use of a smartphone. And they said 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. I do not know a school where they say of the behavioral issues we have to deal with as a school, less than half. I have not heard of that. In fact, I had this is the city of Kent, police officer who works with young people, and he said 100% of the calls he goes on, 100% of the calls he goes on have to do with smartphones and specifically with social media. He said of all the gang violence they have to deal with, all of their gang violence is coming off of social media. He said it's not about this is our block and you can't cross this street anymore. He's like, it's all stuff that's happening online and the way respect and rapport is happening there. That's a side note to say we are seeing behavioral issues stem from social media and smartphones in a way we haven't seen previously. And when you knock out the smartphone during school hours, you're going to knock down a lot of the drama that's happening. I had a teacher who said that when they limited it just to passing period, that the kid would be fine for 45 minutes, have a 5-minute passing period and be crying by the time they got to the next class. Why? Because they read something on social media or through a group message that was traumatic to them. So that child has now shown up. They're not better from knowing this information. It wasn't something important to their life like Auntie is sick and I need to be praying for her. Auntie is sick and I need to leave school so I can be with her. It's so-and-so said such and such. And now how do you feel? And oh, by the way, what do you think just happened to that kid's academic performance in the next class period? It tanked. Was that information she could have found it at 3? Sure. Would it have still been present? Yes, but it wouldn't have directly interfered with her educational process. And that's what we're thinking about here. Should schools go phone free? Yes, they're a net loss. So we need to get rid of them. What can we do? We can ask them just to keep them away. Keep them on your person, but don't look at them. We know that actually hampers educational wellness. Then we can say, keep it in your backpack, but we know they're going to sneak it. It's kind of a calculated risk, but at least we have a rule. We need consistency. It's going to up the amount the teachers and admin have to be engaged with this conversation by a lot. Because a lot of kids are going to just try to get really good at hiding it. They're going to try to get really good at sneaking it and get really mad when they get caught because so-and-so didn't get caught and you're just picking on me. So then we come to 2 more intense and then the most intense. You can say we're going to keep lockers. Not big lockers like we think of where your backpack goes in it. We're going to keep phone lockers. Little itty bitty ones. You walk in the school, you put your phone in there, you close it. The assumption is now all phones are in those. You can use your one-to-one devices that our school uses. You can use your the school front office phone if you need to make a phone call. Or if you have a medical condition, you can absolutely sign a waiver because that's one of the things. If you have a kid with diabetes, they've got a monitor that works with their smartphone that notifies family. You absolutely could have a waiver and say this child needs a smartphone. But if that child is using their medical waiver to check TikTok, we just had the opportunity to spend a couple $100 on a medical device because they have analog versions of those too. You can get a glucose monitor that doesn't connect to your smartphone. They're expensive, they're annoying, but they're options. And if a child is trying to use a medical waiver to use something that's distracting and unfair for the rest of their peers, then we have a cause to change the device that we're using. Lockers are one of the options. So let's put our phone in there. Let's walk these halls phone free from 7:45 to 2:45 or whatever your school timeline might be. And let's focus on relationship, education, learning personal character, and dealing with the fact that we use as human beings our smartphones as a way to cope. We are codependent on the internet to be okay. We need our video games. We need our noise. We need our AirPods that are constantly giving us a slow drip of lo-fi so that we can just get through today. I don't blame the phone. The phone is our medication. What we need to do is to peel that layer back and say, what's wrong with my heart and my mind to the point where I need this to get through today. It's okay. We all cope. I'm not blaming you for having that be true about yourself. I'm not blaming you for being anxious when you don't have access to a phone. I'm saying don't leave it there. Don't allow yourself to get to a spot where you're so lonely that you don't know how to call for help because your phone use is actually the call. And putting your phone in a locker at high school is going to show not everything's okay, and our school needs to learn how to deal with it because that's what's going to happen. We're going to have some kids who aren't okay for the first week, 2 weeks. Anna Lemke in her book Dopamine Nation says it takes up to a month, but the first 2 weeks are the reset weeks. That's the drop down as kids go, wow, I needed this to be all right, and now I'm getting hours without it, and now I'm starting to calibrate, and by 2 weeks I've hit my low point, and now I start to rebuild my ability to feel real world success and excitement and stimulation that isn't coming at the high octane pace that dopamine can come when you go through drool tech, or that rewards can come, or that social wins can come, as Nir Eyal talks about in his book Hooked, that you have a trigger that leads you to an action that leads you to a variable reward, like a comment or a like or a literal loot drop from a llama in Fortnite, to an investment that means I'm more likely to repeat that behavior the next time I do it. It is a true loop. It's just behavioral psychology, but at the end of the day, most drool tech is built around that. You will see people who are used to that to feel okay and will struggle with not having regular access. The beautiful part about the locker idea is that you have them in a physical spot, probably at the entrance of your school, or in different halls, depending how your school is set up and how big it is, where you can put your physical phone away. And now the assumption is your phone's in there. It doesn't matter if you bring a burner phone. We don't care which phone is in there. The point is, if you bring out a phone, we now have a very clear set of circumstances to enact to say, hey, that phone isn't good for our learning environment, so I need you to give that to me. You can come get it at the end of the day. Hey, you did it twice this week. I need a parent or a guardian to come and pick this up. Hey, you did it 3 times. This is going to escalate because we are seeing that this actually isn't something you're necessarily in control of. There's compulsive behavior happening here, and we want to help you get well. There's no way academics are going to be as successful if you're in a spot where you need that phone this much. That then brings us to our 4th option, which is you could give them a pouch. There are companies that will sell you a physical pouch. They're typically something like Kevlar, so they can't be easily torn, where you can give the kid the pouch. It gets clicked shut by a little magnetic system similar to that thing that's the ink pouch at a store. It's like on your clothing, so you can't walk away with it. So you could do that, and it gets magnet shut, and then you need the machine, a little kiosk you go to, and you can unmagnet shut and get your phone out at the end of the day. Certainly an option. A lot more logistics with this. You got moving parts, you got bags that go missing and can be damaged and need to be replaced. You got kids that are so desperate, they're going to bring a sharp object and cut that bag open, which is the stories that are going around about these things. Like, that's how much they feel like they need it. But it does make kids feel comfortable that they know their device is at least with them. And then the 5th and final is there are schools that are attempting to go completely phone free. Don't even bring it. I would say of these 5, logistically, the one I like the best is the phone locker. I like the idea that the kid gets to put it there. The expectation is the phone is there. It doesn't really matter if they do or not, because the point is when we see a phone, we now have a conversation point. We have a spot for the phone to go. We have a conversation to have about what's going on, and we get to repeat hey, we're not doing this because we don't like you. We're doing this because we do. We really love you, and we know that this phone is a net loss for you. So because we want to see who you can become without a phone, because we need you to be able to focus, because we don't want you to medicate with social media and video games and streaming services. And by the way, I'm being really generous by not including pornography in that, but there are kids that absolutely need that to feel okay. And it is an addiction on a clinical level from a behavioral addiction, along with gambling and other things. You can get addicted. We're just sticking to the big ones that apply to everybody. There's a smaller portion of the population that would struggle with that. But even things just like streaming YouTube all the time, or having a Discord that's always on with your friends going in through an AirPod, those things get addressed when your phone's away. We don't have to worry about the fancy moving parts of bags and kiosks and technology and how's it work. It's in a given location. It could be at the front of the school or near the admin offices. It's in a spot where students see it, where it sets a visual standard. It's in a safe place. No one else can tinker with it. It's not going in a bin with 30 other phones where someone can grab the wrong phone or purposely grab 2 or take it while the teacher's out or anything. There's lockers. They're in a public space. They're going to be locked. Your device is here, but it's also walking away. It's what we should do when we go to work. Parents and adults, think about this. If your new workforce showed up and they're used to spending 7 hours without a phone on them, teachers, when we are modeling behavior for our kids, we'd better find a way to communicate other than our smartphones. We should model for our kids that we can also go from 7:45 to 2:45 without a smartphone in front of us. Sure, use your messaging system on your teaching devices. Use your email system. Find a Slack network connection that allows you to create a staff Slack conversation or a department Slack where you can have those conversations about what needs to happen or about that schedule change because of that assembly that's coming up. I get it. And communication is important, but we don't have to be doing it across our phones, especially when we're trying to model for kids that these phones are wonderful in the proper context, and education is not the context for them. So that then brings us to the conclusion of this. Should our school go phone free? The answer is yes. The reason is because phones are a net loss for a learning environment, both for the developmental side on the kids, the relational piece for the school, and the example it sets in terms of what phones are built to do. We do not have purely educational phones. We have phones that are built to deliver drool tech. And they're in delivering drool tech, they're delivering bullies, unhealthy strangers, pornography, video games, and distraction for income by trillion-dollar companies that are really, really good at their jobs. Two young developing brains that aren't ready to inhibit that behavior. They physically can't not click that button. It's what they do because their brain can't go, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be reading that story and answering those questions for my future development. That's not how it works. Best case scenario, they go, don't look at it, don't look at it, don't look at it, don't look at it. And they're constantly thinking about not looking at it so much. They can't look at the thing they're supposed to be present with. Let's do our children a favor. Let's get phones out of their hands, out of their pockets, out of their backpacks. Let's put them in lockers. Let's put them in bags. So let's find a solution that works even beyond that. I don't even think I addressed the phone-free school is very difficult because kids lead real lives. They're going to show up, dropped off by one friend, get picked up by another. They're going to get dropped off by one parent, get picked up by another. They're going to come from one house and go to another house. They're going to come from one house and go to sport and go to a sport and go to church and go to home. Like there's a lot happening that if they just leave their phone at home, it won't, like they won't have their phone until 8 p.m. And if your kid can really go 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. without a phone, do they really need a phone? Like if your child needs a phone and if they're healthy and have earned a phone, meaning you've looked at their reset and said, you know what, your relationships and responsibilities, your emotions, your sleep, your enjoyment, and your time are better from the presence of having this phone, cool. I'm all for it. Great. That's awesome. But if your child needs it and they are healthy, then it means that we've assessed that your child is ready for this, that Luke 16:10 piece about if you're faithful in little, you're going to be faithful in much. That reminder of Luke 10, where you're reminded as good parents, we give good gifts. Your child's asked for an egg. They want something that connects them and that makes them whole and that gives them excitement. Don't give them a scorpion that hurts them. Instead, we remove smartphones from the learning environment. It is not easy. It takes the will of families that supports the focus of the school to make learners of great character and ability. And it puts first things first. It recognizes that while one-to-one devices might support learning, smartphones do not. They distract from it. And so we're going to make the hard choices that support this. Is it going to take financial investment? Yes. Is it going to happen overnight? No. Are there other ways to do it? I'm certain there are. Please share them with me. Write me at nathan@gospeltech.net. Send me a note. We're on Instagram and Facebook because you can use social media. It's a lovely place to reach people, but don't use it during school hours. That's a net loss. Can you use it for a school project? Can you use it to connect with people? Certainly. But from 7:45 to 2:45, our focus is on being present, being relational, and learning content that helps us process the world that we live in at the pace of real life. It is a hard thing to do, but it's so important for our children, for our schools, and for the future of our young people's hearts. Because we remember, at the end of the day, we are not here to fix young people, Christian schools. You're not here to save young people. That's Jesus's job. Your job as a Christian school is to be Christ-centered, not Christian, Christ-centered, meaning that Christ is the focus of all the learning, the relationships, and the processes you do. In a public school, your process is to raise up young people of character and purpose. Because at the end of the day, by having a purpose, they're going to recognize they can't make their own. They have to submit to a God who's made them for a purpose. Because at the end of the day, as Tim Keller likes to say, everyone's religious. It's just a matter of what you're putting your faith in. And I love that reminder as we look at smartphones. So let's think about our schools in terms of being phone free. Let's reach out to our admin and say, we're motivated by this. We want to help see this happen. Let's get a PTA group or whatever your parental communication group is with the school together and sign a document that says, we're in support of our teachers getting to do their job, not to be phone police people. And let's get the phones in a spot that removes the pressure from kids to have to make the good decisions all the time. As Anna Lemke points out in Dopamine Nation, willpower is like a muscle, it fatigues. And if we use it too much, at some point, you just can't make the right choice. We want one choice. Put the phone away. Choice is made for the rest of the day. You don't have to constantly be like, don't look at it, don't look at it. Instead, you make one choice, the phone goes away, you now get to focus on school, which is hard enough. Friends are hard enough. Middle school is awful. Young people, please hear me. Life gets better than middle school. Please don't peak now. It gets real good later, but it takes some work and it's really awkward and uncomfortable and it's easier without a smartphone. Smartphones make it much harder. So even if you have a smartphone outside of school, let's go phone free in the schools. Let's find a way to support our admin. Let's bring like-minded families together in support of our young people because we love them. And we want to make sure that the tech we give them access to is loving. So if this is helpful, share it with somebody. Send it out on social media. Tell your friends about it. If you're interested in more resources like this, yes, check out the other podcasts, but go to gospelcenteredtech.com. Anna and I have books coming out. August 13th, we have our books. Actually, that's today. Right. So gospelcenteredtech.com. Today is the last day to get that book at the discounted price. So you can get both books. I want to say it's $29 for the bundle. And the books, Gospel Centered Tech, helps us raise healthy youth in a tech world. And then Anna's book, which is The Graceful Disconnect, helps talk about how can we as parents find peace in Christ while we're trying to parent kids in just a digitally exhausting world. So check those out. And then again, if you have any questions, at Love God Use Tech on Instagram and Facebook, and Nathan at gospeltech.net on email. And then would you join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech?